Hello everyone, Just Podcast TV is here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified on new
Episode
contents.
154. Being too good looking has its disadvantages. The night was dark and the wind was high. The sound of the waves roared in James's ears. Taking advantage of the night, he scaled a steep cliff to enter the Cape of Good Hope's geological park. He climbed up like a nimble monkey. There were still bright lights in some of the staff offices nearby, but those on duty were engrossed in their phones. They did not notice that someone had quietly passed through the gate and entered the inner part of the park. After entering the park to prevent unnecessary trouble, James avoided all of the cameras. Soon he arrived at the headland closest to the sea in the protected area. Listening to the deafening sound of the waves outside the Cape of Good Hope, James could not help but smile helplessly. He had never thought that he would come to this geological wonder in such a way. Just as James was thinking about it, the cold and mechanical voice of the system suddenly sounded. Congratulations to the host for successfully passing the card and obtaining the Chateau Remy winery. The next mission spot is the Eiffel Tower. Although the robot voice did not have any emotions, the words landed in James's ears as if they'd been whispered seductively. Europe! Wait, what did I just get? Chateau Remy? Oh my God! James almost jumped into the ocean in surprise and joy when he checked the system's reward again. Chateau Remy, the finest winery in the world. Before James obtained the system, he could only dream of drinking a famous wine like Remy 1982. He'd never thought that such a legendary winery would be his. But wasn't it an old family business, its vineyards passed down for generations? How could the system buy it? Whatever, he could drink Remy 1982 anytime now. It didn't matter how it happened. The next stop was Bordeaux, and after that, the Eiffel Tower. And he could meet up with Vanessa, Krista, and Katie again. It was weird how he missed them after only a few days apart, but tomorrow they'd be together again. Standing on the Cape of Good Hope, he sang to the sea breeze. The next day, James gathered Sam Kello, Raymond, and Phyllis together and settled West Group's affairs. The company had regained its vitality and its usual vigor thanks to his cash infusion. James quickly finished dealing with everything. After everything was settled, James took out his phone and called Stephen Leland of East Ocean Maritime. This time, he did not plan to pilot a yacht to France to collect the rewards and check-ins. That would be too slow. He was prepared to book a ticket and fly straight to Greece to meet up with the three beauties. He wanted to spend a few days there and take a look at the legendary Mount Olympus. Then they would go to Bordeaux, France and collect the winery. After that, they would go to the Eiffel Tower in Paris, the next mission spot. The more James thought about this arrangement, the happier he felt. Romantic encounters on the Aegean Sea, the luxury of Paris. They could even experience the passion of the bullfighting in Madrid or the colorful city of Istanbul. James had never dreamed he'd be this kind of jet-setter. His spirits were sky high. Sitting in his office, he imagined he could smell the Aegean Sea and the perfumes of Paris and the alluring fragrance of the wine made by Chateau Remy. While James was lost in his thoughts, there was a knock on his door. "Come in, please." Phyllis walked into the office and said respectfully to James, "Your flight has been booked, sir. You will be flying to Athens at 1 o'clock this afternoon." "Yes, okay." James nodded and felt very satisfied. After she left, he looked at the time. It was still morning. To pass the time until he had to go to the airport, he called Sam Kello and Raymond to have tea with him. He wanted the two of them to get rid of their past grudges and let go of the hatred in their hearts. They had had a good relationship in the past, but they now had a great hatred for each other. He wanted to resolve their conflict so the two of them could work together and lead the West Group to a stable future. After all, both of them were very capable. It was just that they'd been through a lot. Sam Kello was standing in front of James's desk when Raymond stepped into James's office saying, Mr. President, are you looking for me?" They looked at each other in surprise. James hadn't told either of them that the other would be present. In addition, other than Phyllis, no one knew he was leaving for Greece that afternoon. James looked at the two of them and then gestured for them to take a seat. There was a heavy atmosphere in the office. Although the two of them didn't show any hostility in front of James, he could still feel Sam Kello's hatred towards Raymond. Feeling the awkward atmosphere, James coughed lightly. He personally made a pot of good tea and poured a cup for each of them. Only then did he say, "Sam Kello, actually, I think Raymond is not as bad as you think. There are many things that you don't know about him, and he has had his own difficulties." Sam Kello instantly understood James's intention in summoning the two of them. He began, "Sir, James held up a hand. "Don't talk. Raymond, do you mind telling Sam Kello what happened to you?" "Sir, my life is yours. I will do whatever you want me to do." Raymond told Sam Kello the whole story. After listening, although Sam Kello's attitude toward Raymond didn't change all at once, he started to look at Raymond in a different light. He expressed his deep sympathy for what had happened to him. Phyllis, Raymond, and Sam Kello saw James off at Cape Town's airport. "Be careful on the road," said Phyllis, giving him a hug. She was sorry to see him go when the company was just getting back on its feet. "Don't worry, Mr. President," said Raymond. "I will definitely work with Sam Kello to manage your company well." Sam Kello nodded and shook James's hand. Although he didn't say anything, he didn't want James to leave. "See you all later." James turned around and walked into the airport. 20 minutes later, James had just taken his seat in first class when he heard an alluring female voice. "Hey, handsome, are you going to Athens too?" He turned his head and saw a blonde beauty with blue eyes. Never a moment's peace, he thought happily to himself. My good looks are a curse. "That's right, beautiful," he said, taking a good look at her. She looked about his age. She was even taller than the 5'10" James. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, and a curvy figure with long legs. Her skin was fair and smooth. She was a natural sexy beauty. "Me too," she said with a very charming smile. James laughed. What a coincidence. But he didn't know what else to say. He was struck dumb by her beauty. After all the time he'd spent with Vanessa, Katie, and Krista, he was out of practice talking to pretty strangers. He hadn't flirted with a new girl since his time in New York City. But this girl didn't seem at a loss for words. She smiled again and said, "As you Americans say, it was meant to be." That broke the ice, and he laughed. "Where did you learn about American culture?" he asked. Suddenly, he felt like he had plenty to say to her. "Oh, I studied for a few semesters at Bentham University. That's supposed to be a great school. Maybe I'll study there myself sometime." She raised her eyebrows. "Are you so sure they'd let you in?" she asked with a hint of teasing in her eyes. James pretended to be shocked by her question. He said with a laugh, "They'd jump at the chance to enroll me." She smiled. "You're funny. May I ask your name?" "Oh, my name is Lucia," the blonde girl replied, her eyes sparkling like gems. "Oh, that's a beautiful name, Lucia. A very poetic name. It's French, isn't it?" "That's right. You're funny and perceptive." Lucia did not hesitate to praise James. After that, they talked about anything and everything. During their conversation, James found out that Lucia was from Paris. She was a supermodel who often participated in Paris Fashion Week. She had come to Cape Town to visit relatives, and now she was headed to Greece to participate in a high-end fashion event. After hearing Lucia's introduction, James finally understood. No wonder the girl looked so extraordinary. She was actually an international supermodel. More than that, she was smart, with a great sense of humor. She reminded him a little of Krista, both beautiful and intelligent. Similarly, in Lucia's eyes, James was the perfect man, funny and charming, a great conversationalist and handsome as well. Already, she felt like she was falling for him. 5. Hell's Fury times 3. Hours later, the plane was about to arrive at its destination. As the two of them were about to part, a trace of reluctance rose in Lucia's heart. She sighed and said sadly, "I wonder if there's still a chance for us to meet again." "If we're fated to meet again, we will. When we arrive in Paris, I will invite you to dinner, but James deliberately did not finish his sentence. Lucia looked at him curiously and asked, "But what?" James chuckled. "But you have to accept my invitation." Lucia laughed. "It would be my honor to have dinner with you." The plane landed safely in Athens. Outside the Athens International Airport, Vanessa, Krista, and Katie had been waiting for James for a long time. They hadn't been away from him for long, but their longing to see him was indescribable. They saw James and Lucia walking out of the airport and immediately felt jealous. They had planned to rush forward to hug and welcome him, but that plan was immediately canceled. Sensing trouble, James wanted to find an excuse to say goodbye to the Frenchwoman. Just then, Lucia happened to see the driver arranged by her modeling agency to pick her up. She gave James a polite hug, then reluctantly said goodbye and left. It was really just a friendly hug, but the timing was bad. James could feel his three companions' hostility already, but he knew that if he tried to tell them there was nothing inappropriate about a friendly hug, they would just get angrier. They might look like fluffy bunnies, but they were really tigresses. So James decided to act like nothing was wrong, even though the women were like statues glaring at him. He coughed. "Oh, hey Krista, you guys are here. Hey Vanessa, hi Katie." This was an airport, and there were many pedestrians around. He really hoped the women wouldn't make a scene in front of all these people, but they just glared more angrily. Then they rushed towards him, wide-eyed, and asked in unison, "Who was that woman just now?" The three women had no intention of keeping their voices down. The commotion instantly attracted the attention of countless foreigners. Ladies, please, we're in public." This seemed to bring them to their senses. Seeing the three women stop yelling, James secretly laughed in his heart. He quickly continued, "We don't want to give Americans a bad name abroad, right?" He already knew that he would be punished by the three women, but he was hoping he could keep it private. He was an important man now and couldn't afford to tarnish his image. "James, stop right there." The three women realized that they had been tricked when they saw James turn around and run away. They immediately shouted and chased after him. Unfortunately, they had missed the best opportunity to slap him. Now they could only bitterly chase after him. "How dare you lie to us? You're a dead man," Vanessa said fiercely as she chased after him. Onlookers thought she looked pretty cute chasing after him like that. Not only did they not feel pity for James, they looked at him with envy and jealousy, especially the men. They seemed to be thinking, "Man, I want to be chased and beaten by three super beauties at once." Unfortunately, they could only watch helplessly from the sidelines. Nothing like this would ever happen to them. However, James did not feel lucky at this moment. He only wanted to say, "Man, be careful what you wish for." He found a place where there were fewer people and waited for the women to catch up. He was here to meet up with the three of them, so they might as well have it out here. Since he could not avoid this torture, he might as well accept it. The three women were already out of breath when they caught up with James. They rested their hands on their knees and gasped for breath. They glared at him, but they had no strength left to deal with him. He kept saying soothing things to them, but in his heart he was laughing. He knew that he had dodged a bullet, and he'd learned a valuable lesson. He must be careful when talking to beautiful women in the future. It was really risky to hug. He had to be careful in everything. When the three women recovered, Krista read him the riot act. She said that he should not have tricked them into going to Greece ahead of time. Finally, they all took a taxi to the hotel where they were staying in Athens. That was the end of that farce. Although Krista and the others had been here for a few days, they had been too worried about James to enjoy Athens. Her idea was that they could have a meal and rest for a while to make up for the sleep he'd lost on the plane. Then they'd all see the sights. That night, the women brought James to the famous Syntagma Square to feel the enthusiasm of the Greek people. The next morning, they went to the Acropolis and visited the gate of the city and the Parthenon. In the afternoon, they went to the famous Mount Olympus and to Olympia to view the Temple of Zeus. In the birthplace of the Olympic flame, they felt Greece's long history, the sacred spirit that had survived for thousands of years. in the higher, faster, and stronger Olympic spirit that had been preserved to the present day. They took their time exploring the city of Athens and the surrounding area. On the third day, they searched the streets and alleys for different delicacies. They got to know the local customs of the city. On the fourth morning, they went to the Aegean Sea together to enjoy a day at the beach. Episode 156. Since you want to play, I'll play with you. The Aegean Sea lay between mainland Greece and Asia Minor, a great bay in the Mediterranean. It was smaller than the Persian Gulf and was the cradle of the early civilizations of Crete and Greece. Many gods and legends had been born here. There were many islands in the Aegean Sea, and many beautiful legends of love were connected to it. This place symbolized the purity and eternity of love, so it was now the Holy Land for couples from all over the world. Among the many islands in the Aegean Sea, the most famous and most fun island was Santorini. It was an hour's flight from Athens, and one morning James, Krista, Katie, and Vanessa journeyed to it. When they arrived, it was just 9:30 in the morning. It was a sunny day, and the sky was clear, perfect for sightseeing. As soon as they got off the plane, Vanessa was extremely excited. She grabbed James's hand and ran around. She had clearly forgotten all the unhappiness from his arrival. The most beautiful scenery on Santorini was in the town of Oia, which was the northernmost part of the island. It was a village carved out of the top of a cliff. It was unique and the most beautiful place on the island. At the top of the cliff, the white cathedral had a particularly eye-catching blue dome. It was the same color as the blue sea. It was a beautiful scene between heaven and earth. The cathedral was very popular for weddings. They took a bus tour of the island and soon arrived at the famous cliff village at the northernmost tip of the island, Oia. It was already past 10 in the morning. Although it was not the best time to view the scenery, James and his group were attracted by the scenery when they saw the white village shining under the sun and blue sea under the cliff. There were many tourists from all over the world at the entrance of the small town. Many people lined up at the entrance to buy tickets and waited to enter the scenic area. The line was very long, and the sun was still bright. It seemed that if James and the others got in line, they would have to wait for at least a few hours. James didn't want to wait in line. The women couldn't wait to stand under the blue dome of the famous church at the top of the cliff. So without saying anything, he bought VIP tickets. They were a little expensive, but to James, who was a billionaire, they weren't even worth a hair. This was the first time the three women had seen such a grand scene. After entering the scenic area, they kept chattering nonstop, as if they were happy little birds. Looking at the beautiful scenery in front of them, they were chatting with each other. Had they seen this place in some movie? Of course, they took lots of pictures. James, on the other hand, was enjoying the scenery off to the side. He was bored alone, but he didn't like to have his picture taken. The three women knew this and didn't bother him about it. When taking pictures, they naturally ignored him. However, he had already gotten used to it. He looked around and enjoyed the scenery alone. This cliff village was indeed very interesting. There were many viewing platforms on the roofs. Sitting on them, leisurely lying on chairs, sipping red wine and looking at the sea would indeed be a kind of divine enjoyment. James had never wanted to stay somewhere permanently, but today, in the cliff village of Santorini, he had the urge to stay for a long time. Finally, the women were done taking pictures and James called them to stroll in the unique alleys of the small town of Oia. That kind of ancient and romantic color made them feel like they were walking in an ancient corridor of time and space. Along the way, they encountered some people who had come here to shoot a movie. There was a rumor that one of them was from Hollywood. James wondered what kind of blockbuster the movie would be. Soon they found themselves at the most sacred church on the mountain peak. The church had a white wall and a blue dome, and its overall shape was indescribably beautiful. Under the sunlight, the whole church looked unique and solemn. When people looked at it, they could not help but feel a sense of holiness in their hearts. James and the women followed the endless stream of tourists into the church. A wedding was being held there, and it was especially grand. The three women were very envious of the bride. Happy times always passed very quickly, and before they knew it, it was afternoon. In order to protect the environment and leave a pure and beautiful picture for all the tourists, walking was the only means of transportation in the scenic area. After walking around for half a day, the three women felt a little tired and did not want to walk anymore. James saw this and immediately said, "Well, since you're tired out, let's find a place to lie down on chairs on a roof to enjoy the scenery slowly." Okay. As soon as the suggestion was made, the three beauties immediately agreed with it. This was probably peak tourist season, though. It wouldn't be easy to find a hotel that could accommodate their request. However, since everyone agreed with him, he should go out and look for one. If he was lucky, he might find a good reservation. James had plenty of money now. Money was just a number to him. Therefore, they all looked for hotels with good rooms and ridiculously high prices. Finally, they found a luxury hotel on the edge of the cliff. It had an open-air balcony on the roof that allowed for one to view the sea. A young couple there was trying to check out. They had only stayed for one night and felt that the cost was way too much, so they didn't want to stay any longer. When James and the three beauties appeared, they happened to bump into these young lovers who were arguing with the front desk of the hotel. James bought their room reservation at 5 times the asking price. Not only did the young couple refund the hotel, but they also received a considerable sum themselves. This surprised them. The two of them thanked James profusely and left with happy smiles on their faces. Just as James and his group took out their identification cards at the front desk of the hotel and were about to register, another pair of tourists walked in. They were tourists from France. James could tell from their accents. They were a man and a woman. The man was handsome and had the typical gentlemanly demeanor of a Frenchman, and half of his beard was white. He looked to be at least 50 years old. The woman looked to be in her 20s. Her appearance was average, but when it was coupled with her temperament, she looked very charming. That was a big age difference. The three beauties exchanged glances with James, but it wasn't all that strange. Maybe people were more open-minded about that kind of thing in Europe. This couple wanted a room, and it seemed they were frequent visitors to this hotel. Quite a few of the hotel's front desk staff knew the man and greeted him in a fawning manner. Unfortunately, they were too late. The last room in the hotel had already been bought by James at a high price. The Frenchman took out a thick stack of bills. He smiled at the concierge. "I must stay here tonight. Everything has been arranged. These are the tips for you." One of the staff smiled and said to the Frenchman, "Okay, Mr. Fernan, don't worry. We will settle it for you now." Then she whispered to the other two staffers at the front desk for a while. Finally, she started to check in Furman and his wife, ignoring James and the other three. She didn't care about them. The difference in attitude was too obvious. James frowned. He did not understand. The staff had said the hotel was full. Why was there a room now? "Mr. Fernan, your check-in registration has been completed. Here's your room card." The registration process was done very quickly. A receptionist quickly handed the card key to Fernan respectfully. Her money-minded eyes were actually staring at the stack of US bills on the counter. When James saw the number on the key card, his pupils suddenly contracted. "Wait," he said, holding up one hand. "Room 504? Isn't this the room I bought at a high price from that young couple? Why did you give it to them? Since you guys want to play, then I'll play with you guys."